For more on this whole situation, I'm going to hand it over to After Hours producer Kara McKinney for her perspective on this case.
Thank you, Alex. So I'll start by quoting Raynell's sister, who, after being told about her brother's death, said, quote, "I wouldn't say at this point that this counts as bad news." Harsh, but kind of accurate, especially when you hear more about this guy's background. So the sister also telling the Daily Mail, quote, "He's a lot older than me. He was this nebulous figure who popped in and out of our lives, usually demanding money from our mom. I would describe him as a jerk, verbally cruel sometimes when he's not getting his way. Every kind of bullying and abusive tactic he could think of, that's what he would do with her. And it didn't matter how much money he was making, he always needed more from mom, who made almost nothing." I should also mention that his mother has dementia and suffers from stress-induced seizures, and still this is how he treated her, even allegedly stealing her medication to boot. And yet, according to Vice, we're supposed to believe that he's some sort of valiant knight in shining armor who stands up for the downtrodden when he can't even treat his own ailing mother with the tiniest amount of respect. Obviously, that story is not adding up. Raynell was also a self-proclaimed ANTIFA supporter who openly talked on social media about starting a war in this country on behalf of the Black Lives Matter movement, in which he said people would have to die. Funny how that works out. But that isn't stopping other Antifa militants in Portland from mourning his death.
Time to go missing, yeah, guarantee it's time to unite. In just tonight, they just killed our brother Mike. So it's time that you go. Gotta do it one time, gotta drop a flow. Fuck the po-po, homie, headlights. You cops, time to get your head right.
Always watch out for frustrated artists. We should have learned that lesson from World War II. But I promise you, there's a reason why I played you that clip, and it wasn't just to torture your ears. We on the right always claim that leftists are hypocritical and live by double standards. But that's not actually entirely true. In some sick and twisted sense, they actually think they're acting logically. I know it's hard to believe, but bear with me. When you hear leftists like that wannabe rapper talking about how peaceful the world would be without cops, laugh in his face, because he doesn't even believe what he's saying. I mean, he was literally just singing the praises of an alleged murderer before his rant about the police. This isn't about facts or statistics for lefties, because for these monsters, the question isn't who can better protect our communities, the cops or social workers. Their point of view is to abolish the police and to replace them with social workers precisely because they know those social workers will be ineffective and pathetic, and they'll be able to walk all over them. What you just saw, that's what they want, and police get in the way of that. They have no real moral outrage over police shootings, since they're completely fine with more than 30 people getting killed at these riots, including innocent children. In fact, the total number of police-involved shootings, especially fatal ones, are at the lowest they've ever been in this country. So what's there to protest? Responsibility, hard work, self-sacrifice, all traditional Christian American values. That's what they're protesting, whether or not they even know it. These commies don't want to grow up. All these fights about policing and social justice are just proxies for what they really want, which is to keep doing drugs and living off the government dole, as sports commentator Steve Inman rightly points out in Portland.
Steve Inman reporting this is downtown Portland, as you can see, has turned into a literal It's one of those scenes that you've seen in RoboCop, something that we've seen in sci-fi movies, the apocalyptic movies. And now it's happening in real life. Who the hell Scooter is that? Look at all these losers. I can only smell the video right now as we speak. A stench beyond comprehension. And these have tagged up everything in the park. This is their way of life. This is what they want. They want to live like this. I almost feel as if I caught hepatitis by watching this, and it's disgusting, it's repulsive. But the mayor of Portland is obviously okay with this, has no issues at all.
That's why these movements keep propping up the worst of the worst, because they identify with criminals and they hate heroes. Last Friday, I joined Alex in discussing the unjust murder charges leveled against Kyle Rittenhouse, the teenager from Kenosha, Wisconsin, who I believe was acting in self-defense. But what was crazy to me is that all three of Rittenhouse's attackers were convicts, including a domestic abuser and an actual pedophile who did hard time for destroying the lives of several young children. Yet those criminals are the ones getting hailed as heroes by the likes of CNN, while the teen is getting smeared as a racist and a domestic terrorist. I mean, what kind of a world do we live in where a minor getting chased down by a convicted pedophile is seen as the aggressor in that situation? I also talked about in Portland how another convicted child rapist is facing serious charges for allegedly stabbing a black Trump supporter at a separate riot. And every day we're hearing new reports about random white people getting brutally attacked by assailants yelling "Black Lives Matter." So looking at these past 3 months of rioting in its totality, let's start with the most obvious takeaway. Never trust the left. It should have been obvious before, but it definitely is now. That's why I said earlier tonight to laugh in their faces, because when they talk about police brutality or racial justice or anything else. If you think I'm exaggerating, let's just take feminism for example. Feminists exchanged their pink you-know-what beanies for Black Lives Matter t-shirts and Antifa riot gear, and now it's okay for a man to allegedly break into a woman's home while she sleeps and do to her what Joe Biden is accused of doing to Tara Reade. Actually, on second thought, maybe that's why they like Jacob Blake so much. I mean, I can just imagine all these feminists dusting off their old Stop Brett Kavanaugh signs and writing across the back of it, "Silence is consent," for their BLM march against white privilege, and not even noticing the extreme irony. Here's Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden after speaking with Jacob Blake, his anti-Semitic father, and the rest of his family while visiting Kenosha, Wisconsin on Thursday.
As I said, his dad, his son, his brother, 2 sisters, and a family lawyer. 2 family lawyers were there. And what I came away with was the overwhelming sense of resilience and optimism.
So I guess the girlfriend who called police on Jacob Blake for illegally trespassing in her home and threatening her just months after he allegedly sexually assaulted her and stole from her isn't going to get any special visit from Biden. What about her resilience? Why is her abuser being glorified? Blake may still be alive, but he's now a saint for leftists, just like George Floyd, who held a woman at gunpoint while her home was being ransacked, and Rayshard Brooks, a convicted domestic abuser. So much for feminism. But we can also look at the gun control issue and how just a few months ago, leftists were saying we need a mandatory gun buyback program because they said it was immoral to own those types of weapons in the first place. But lo and behold, the first moment these riots broke out, all these leftists showed up armed, usually with giant rifles to guard their artificial borders and to kick out people they didn't like. So cross off gun control and border security too. So perhaps the point was never to disarm everyone in America, only law-abiding patriots. Maybe the point isn't to meaningfully reform the police, but to purposefully leave good people without any sort of defense. Maybe all of this has been in the works far longer than we've thought. Remember how Project Veritas released video earlier this year of Bernie campaign staffers threatening to burn down cities if President Trump got reelected.
So if Trump gets reelected, what?
Cities burn.
Do you even think that some of these, like, MAGA people could even be re-educated?
I mean, we gotta try. There's a reason Joseph Stalin had gulags, right? Mm-hmm. And actually, gulags were a lot better than what the CIA has told us that they were.
This is planned and this is organized. Something to keep in mind moving forward this weekend. And with that, I'm going to toss it back over to Alex.
Thank you very much, Karen. As always, I mean, a very insightful look into what's going on right now and a very unique perspective as well. Thank you very much, Kara.
Thank you.